right. All right. Welcome, everybody. Most of you by now should know me. I am Ryan Wood, the CMO here at Omniprint International. And if this is your first Creators Live session, welcome. As a reminder, every single week, every Wednesday, we do these completely live. These are not scripted. These are not pre-recorded, as you all know. This is a live session where we bring in senior technicians from the Omniprint International team to give you tips, tricks, and coaching on how to get the most out of your FreeJet printer experience. And this is our only intent with these is just to add value to you guys. You guys are out there doing the hard work. You guys are putting in the time in the shop. And we want to make sure that you're getting the most out of your guys' FreeJet machines and getting the best quality prints on the planet. So again, welcome. Couple of housekeeping items if you weren't here last week. We are doing things a little bit differently. You'll notice that there's some people here on camera, and then there's some people here that are not on camera. We sent out an email to all of our active customers, and you should have gotten one yesterday and again 1 hour before this session, including your individual panelist link for Zoom that will enable you to join through video. Why are we doing that? Well, because I want to see all of your faces. I want to get to know all of our customers and build relationships with you. That is our intent by having you join live and on camera with us so that we can see your faces and we can start building that FreeJet community and getting to know one another. Second off here, one thing that we learned last week by doing so is that panelists will not be able to use the Q&A box at the bottom. It sucks, right? But it's okay, because the point of it's going to force you guys to take your questions live with us on this show. Which is even better. We want real human-to-human conversation here. And so if you're an attendee, you can still raise your hand and go live, but and use the Q&A box. But if you're a panelist, you won't necessarily be able to use the Q&A box, which is okay. Just click the little yellow hand at the bottom, raise your proverbial hand, your digital hand, if you will, at the very end here during our Q&A session. And we're going to patch you in live to engage with us and our senior techs as we go through today's session. So first off, how's everybody doing? For those on camera, Michael, Victor, Eddie, Ida, how are y'all doing? Trudy Ann, how you doing? Welcome. All right. You guys doing good? Thumbs up. Good. I'm doing great here today. It's beautiful weather. It's like upper 60s here in North Texas, which is like good spring weather. I'll take that. And I hope y'all are also doing really well. Ray, welcome. Nice to have you here, sir. Cool. Well, Edsel, where are you at? You around here? I think you're here. Why don't you go ahead and just kick us off, man? Tell us a little bit about today's topic and what you're hoping to get out of it for all of our FreeJet operators here.
So today we're going to be doing the maintenance and best practices. So we're going to be going over a couple of things. I think most of you already know what you need to clean, some of these areas in there, but I'm going to go over in a little bit more detail. Some of the things that's helping prevent, some of the things that will definitely help out with a little bit more attention to the maintenance in there. So we'll dig in there. We'll do each one daily, weekly, and monthly. And again, most of those you guys have already been through, but I'll show you a little bit of the extra details when it comes to some of this stuff. So I'll be going, I'm going to try to cover as much as I can. So I'll be going hopefully not too fast for you guys, but that way I can get as much info as I can out to you guys here. So
yeah, take notes, folks. There's nothing wrong with taking notes. If you've got a maintenance routine, that's great. Be open and willing to learn something new today, because we deal with this stuff every single day. Again, what you're going to learn here today is a daily, weekly maintenance routine methodology that will preserve the integrity of your product and make sure that you get high lifetime value and high lifetime productivity out of that. So please be willing to take notes, be willing to learn something new. And Edsel, let's dive in, man.
Cool. All right. So first thing is going to be our daily, which is I'll go over the daily shutdown for this. So first thing is we have to release our head. Now this function works. A lot of people think you have to fully turn on the machine in order for you to be able to release the head. Just the back power switch on, these functions actually work. So right now I only have the back power switch on, but you can also have the machine fully on. So I'm just going to hit function up, move our head over. And the first thing we start doing when we clean this stuff up, we're going to start wet capping it, but we're going to start cleaning up our pumps. Now, for those of you that have had the machine long enough, for years, I'm sure some of you guys have gone through replacing these pumps. Then later on, you realize better maintenance, these things will last longer. A lot of this stuff is very dependent on how well you maintain the machine. I can tell you these parts can last you a year, 2 years. They can last you 2 months, if you don't clean this stuff up. So pay attention to it. Very easy stuff. All we have to do is just make sure we do this as easy as it is. You'd be surprised. A lot of people don't go through this stuff. Then things start jamming, especially in this pump area. If you've ever experienced a loud grinding noise, and for those of you that are new, whenever you hear this loud grinding noise, it's a screeching, loud grinding noise, and you'll get scared. You'll hear it. Nothing bad is really happening. It's a loud noise, but that's usually a good indication that something is failing. With this pump. This pump basically locks the head in, releases the head. So if this lock ever fails, this head is just going to try to move over when it's still locked in. So very important piece we're going to go over real quick. What we're trying to do the most is clean it up as best as possible as we can, because we're trying to prevent the ink getting into these gears down here. This is the side that you guys actually don't get to see unless you've replaced it in the past. It sits like this, but underneath there are actually all the gears that move our capping station, that control our pumping sequence there, controls the lock, for all this stuff. So this is exactly what we're trying to prevent it from getting here by doing some preventive maintenance on top and avoiding it from getting down there. Eventually, it can't get down there, but with some good maintenance, these parts can last, a lot longer than obviously if you're not taking care of very well. First thing is, where the head sits at is basically like a rubber gasket. Anybody who has had a car or anything like that, this gasket basically is where the head sits at, these little pads there. And if you ever feel it around this, sort of like a little rubber. Again, it presses up against the head and it creates an airtight seal. So this part's very important to make sure we actually clean this guy up daily. Make sure you wipe it up daily, and you can really avoid any of this stuff from dunking up. Some of these supplies that I'll be using, you guys always have swabs. Obviously, these guys are good. Always keep, a couple of these in hand. We're also going to be using our super cleaner. So super cleaner works great. Keep that in there. Make sure you always got a bottle of that stuff. We'll talk a little bit about a super nozzle cleaner. Some of you guys that are new may have not even have used this already, before, but it's a good little solution, especially when you're having issues with things clogging up. So make sure you for sure always have one of these, in there. Even if you're not going to use it, keep it in there. It comes very helpful. So around these pads, the first thing that I like to do is I actually like to go over it with a dry swab. First, I like to go with a dry because it's a little bit rougher. It's a little bit more of a rough, scrub on it. And if there is dried up ink on there, you're actually able to kind of really scratch it, almost like scratch it off, start lifting some of it off a little bit easier than when you have it wet with the solution. Once, I get as much of it as I can off with a dry swab, that's when I'll come in here and I'll use the super cleaner to start cleaning around and kind of finish it off all the way around. Now, sometimes this stuff is so thick around it. I've seen it so thick around these pads that I actually have been able to go in there and pinch the ink and actually just start lifting this guy up, and I'll even lift up a square shape of the whole pad, so it'll get that bad if you're really not cleaning it up. And that much buildup around the edges, guess what? When this tries to cap over the head, a lot of air is going to start to leak in there. It's not creating a good tight seal. You want to make sure this guy is nice and clean. The actual sponges in there, you're always going to get a little bit of ink in there. It's meant to be pulling ink. I wouldn't go too far as to cleaning them up too much. In fact, I'll show you a little trick, a little method that I use to flush these out. But that's going to be our pads. Clean those guys up as much as you can in those areas, as much as you can in here without, sticking it in there too hard. Again, all those gears, all this stuff leads down into these gears, and it'll really start to grind up or not pump well. You may have to stop your pump and then start it again just to get it to initiate. So clean those guys up around real good. Very easy. If you do this daily, it's going to be a simple wipe. It's sometimes people will wait a week, 2 weeks to clean it, and at that point, a little swab scrub is not going to be enough. You're going to have to get in there and start picking out chunks of ink, you know, out of this stuff to be able to clean it up real good. So do it daily, very easy. It'll be a quick wipe, won't take very long, and you can avoid any damage to the stuff here. Now, right next to it is this little spring. For any of you guys that have cleaned up, I'm sure sometimes you're in there cleaning it up. It's a little bit difficult to see there, but there's a small little spring there, and sometimes people are a little bit aggressive, and they hit that spring, and that thing goes flying. You know, and this thing is really small, and you're probably not gonna find it again. You know, so just be a little careful with that spring in there. We do have them, so you know if you do lose them, we do have them here, but just be a little careful with that. They'll go flying. Sometimes people don't even notice that it's there until it's gone, and you're sending us photos, you know, of this pump, and we notice it's gone there. The next thing we're cleaning up in here is this wiper blade. This one, this will happen a lot because the wiper blade is black, and then after it wipes the head, the ink that's on there is also black, right? So then once it dries, it almost looks like it's part of the wiper blade. It almost looks like it's this natural part, you know, of the wiper blade. People think, oh yeah, it's still black. So you know, but in reality, it's actually completely covered in ink, and you have a thick layer of just, you know, ink dried up on there. So give this guy a real good look. It should look like a flat rubber piece, like a flat colored rubber piece. If you notice, it's glossy. There's some color into it. There's probably a thick layer, you know, of actual ink dried up on there. Same thing with this guy. I've gotten to a point where I've peeled off a layer of ink the shape of the wiper blade, you know, just because it's covering the whole entire wall, the whole side. So same thing with this guy. Look at it very well. Make sure you actually don't have large chunks. One of the things that I'll do is I'll actually run my finger along the wiper blade to make sure it is nice and even. You shouldn't feel bumps or anything sticking up, chunks of dried ink, or even pieces of the wiper blade missing. You know, so just ride your finger across it, make sure it feels nice and smooth, and it'll help you make sure you get some good nozzle checks. You know, every time it's pulling, this guy's basically like your windshield wiper on your car. You know, it starts to rain, you turn those guys on, wipes, you know, your windshield. Same thing, except this wipes your printhead. You know, so you want to make sure these are nice. I mean, if you're in your car and you have really bad windshield wipers, guess what? It's not gonna be wiping off that rain. You know, so same exact thing with this wiper blade. You want to make sure you have a nice wiper blade to be able to have a nice wipe or head clean when it's going over the print head. So this is a good one. Another thing to look out for is actually some of these little gaps in here. You know, don't be afraid to get your swab very carefully, just kind of clean in there. This is actually where this wiper blade rotates up and down. And what happens is a lot of ink will build up into this rotating part. And then next thing you know, this wiper blade is not going up, or it may actually be going halfway up, you know, and then it may actually be getting stuck. So keep that in mind when you're going through your maintenance. Get in there, be a little careful, like I said, you know, just kind of, if you're gentle enough, you won't break anything, and just try to get up as much ink as you can out of there. Once it starts to build up in there, once it's, you know, really big, I mean, sometimes you'll get balls of ink, you know, cutting me out of there, building up in there. Once it gets to that point, it's a lot more difficult. You have to spend a lot more time to really get it out there. And then hopefully it's not too deep into these gears, which, you know, could give us some issues. So just kind of keep that stuff in mind. Always, you know, try to get it in there. We're trying to avoid getting it into these gears and trying to avoid having you guys replace this, you know, so make it last as long as possible. Again, you know, I've seen with good maintenance, these pumps can last, you know, 2 years. With bad maintenance, I've seen these pumps last, you know, just a couple months, you know, so it is absolutely really based on your maintenance, you know, so check, you know, always check that around there, the gaskets, the rubber pads, your wiper blade, any of those surrounding plastics, clean it up. You know, you don't want to get too much buildup around there, even though a lot of functions with these surrounding plastics, but always keep it nice and clean. You don't want things getting stuck in there. You don't want things building up too much. But I think besides that, that's going to be basically it for our pump. Underneath our pump, you will have actually a little pad. Usually I recommend replacing that pad when you replace the pump. You know, down here, you'll see a little pad, a little white pad, And over time, basically what it collects is the drippage, or every time it wipes, this wiper blade will just drip down, and it'll drip into that pad. So you shouldn't have too much, a couple of black drops in there. But usually I recommend buying that pad when you are replacing the pump, which can be every year, 2 years. Buy that pad so that way while you have this pump out, you can just slip the pad in there, and then your new pump in there as well. So that's going to be our pump maintenance. Maintain it, guys. This guy, I can tell you right now, if you're not maintaining it, things will clog up, things won't turn right. You hear nasty grinding noises, nasty noises coming from it. You won't be able to prime. You'll be getting bad nozzle checks. Head cleans won't be that effective. So make sure you keep this guy. In fact, one of the things we'll talk about later is actually keeping one in stock. I actually have one at home that I always have there as a just in case. I actually just replaced mine at home not too long ago. And it was about a year and a half, of usage there. So that's one thing. We'll talk about some of this stuff when it's about $230, but we do have a nice maintenance package that includes this and includes a couple other things we'll talk about a little bit later. So, but a very important piece. Make sure you maintain it. If you keep up with this once a week, daily, you'll be, you won't have to be swapping this guy out. You won't be hearing nasty grinding noises coming from your printer there. So then again, that's daily. We'll clean those guys up. The actual wet capping, I'll show you guys a little bit in here. See if I can get this guy. One of the things when we go over our wet capping here is we're trying to clean up these pads by pumping our fluid from the back. Pump some in here real quick. And we normally recommend doing about 3 4 pumps to wet cap it. One thing that I like to do is I'll go a little bit extra, and I like to tell customers to make sure this liquid is clear by the time you're done. If you pump it in and out 3 or 4 times, you may still have some ink in there, and it'll be fine. It really won't give you any issues. But I like to go the extra mile on it, and I like to pump a little bit more extra times in here until the fluid's actually nice and clear. So that may take a couple more pumps, but you'll even notice the sponges start to clean up. The sponges start to clear up a little bit more. And obviously, when the machine sits wet cap, you want it sitting with pure solution. You don't want it sitting with a mixture of ink, with a mixture of half ink, half solution. So for it to be the most effective, you want it to be fairly clear here. So don't be afraid to pump it in a couple more times. This keeping this guy nice and clear will help your print head just stay better maintained. So that's one thing I'll always do is pump it in there a couple of times. I mean, I can see it's pretty much crystal clear now. I can see right through the liquid. I can see right through those pads. And then now when I wet cap my head, I'm pretty much sitting in pure solution rather than a mixture. Now again, the 3 pump technique, it works great. We've been doing that for years and everything, but I like to go a little bit extra on it and like to make sure it's nice and clear but before I wet cap it there. So make sure you go through this. This is a very important step. Sometimes customers don't forget. They'll come back a couple days later, and instead of just a couple 2 head cleans, they're having to sit there prime, head clean until finally it comes back. So doing this simple step will also help you save ink. You won't have to sit there and prime to get things going there. So wet cap it. Excellent technique. Make sure you don't forget it. Clean around the capping station, clean around your wiper blade, and then that little pump right there will last you a little bit longer than if you're not doing obviously the maintenance on there. So real quick, I'll talk about the waste bottle because I've seen a lot of people post this on Facebook when they have issues with the capping station over here. Do not let this guy overflow. If you do let it overflow, the actual ink will go into our wet capping system back here and clog up some valves we have back there. And then maybe your syringe is no longer working. You're pumping that syringe to empty out your capping station. It's not draining it out. That's usually because something clogged up in this system back here, and that's normally due to this waste bottle just getting too full. So when it's about halfway through, dump it out, get rid of it, and then that way you can avoid having these issues with this capping station. So if you ever have issues with, with either your plunger in the back not working anymore, or maybe you start to see bubbles start to form on your capping station up, it's usually an indication that it's got too full, and then now our system in the back is clogged up. So make sure you do it, dump that out when it's about halfway, and then you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So, all right, let's jump into our weekly. This one, we're gonna go. Actually, let's go. I want to talk to you guys about this head underneath. So here's a print head. I actually have one now. Here's a gold face. Really hard to see there. This is actually a real bad one we took off of a printer here. It's dented, it's scratched. Whoever this customer was got head strikes, all over it. It's a real bad print head. But what I want you guys to see here is the edges of the head. So every time we're going through the maintenance, we always tell you don't touch the actual surface of the head. But we want to clean these edge strips that are right here. What happens here all the time is ink will build up over these, and the ink will be black, and the surrounding plastic of the carriage is black. So people will think it's part of the carriage, because it's black. And then I tell them, hey, we need to see those silver strips down there. And they tell me, like, what silver strips? I've never seen them, and they only ever saw them the first day they got the machine when it was clean. And then once ink got built up on there, they just kind of forgot about them. So whenever this head is sitting there, you'll see it. You'll see the mirror part of the head, which is actually the nozzle plate. The edge of it, you should see those metal strips. So make sure you are able to see them on yours. If you can't see them, it just looks all black. That means it's covered in ink. Make sure you have those nice and cleaned up. And same thing, if you do this daily, it's going to be a quick wipe. In one day, you're not going to get a lot of dry buildup. It'll literally just be a quick wipe, and then you're done. If you let it sit there for days, it's gotten to a point where same thing. I've had to get in there and almost started peeling off layers of ink. And anybody who's used the machine for years and has forgotten to do the maintenance, I'm sure you've gone through it where you've having to, just push and almost rub ink out off all the edges because it's so thick and it's so dry that the swab just is not going to do it. So let's not get to that point. Try to avoid that. Again, if it's a quick daily, just go do a quick wipe. It's fine. Like I said, the nozzle plate you don't want to touch. If you accidentally rub it with the swab, with the cleaner, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. You just don't want to sit there with a rag wiping it, doing things like that too, So try to definitely avoid touching that. But the edges are the important part. The wiper blade hits these edges. If there's a lot of buildup on there, instead of cleaning your head, it'll just wipe more ink on your head. So make sure that stuff is good. I even seen it build up so much that it actually starts to dangle down. It dangles down, and it actually starts to rub, on your actual print and give you streaks across your print. So it's almost like a little ink icicle. It just starts to hang down and just starts to rub on there. So make sure you clean that guy up. Make sure, and again, this is your printhead, so very expensive piece, a very important piece. Try to make this last as long as possible, and you can avoid any issues, with this guy. So very easy. It's just quick wipes, nothing too complex. You can get all this done very, very quickly. Next thing we'll talk about is this encoder strip. So your machine will have this clear, transparent strip going across it. It basically tells the print head where it's located. Every time it moves to the left, every time it moves to the right, it knows where it's at. And in fact, if you get really, really close up to it, you'll notice there's a whole bunch of little lines just going across the entire strip. And basically, the sensor behind the head counts these little lines, and it knows exactly where it's at. It knows, hey, I'm supposed to go over here to fire ink. I'm supposed to go over here to do this. So it's very important for a lot of this stuff. So you want to make sure you keep this nice and clean. Always look at it. Look at it. Even if it's not dirty, even if you're not having any issues, check it out real quick. Make sure there's no ink on there. Make sure there's no scratches. Sometimes people will get a little bit too aggressive when they're cleaning this. They'll actually scratch, the encoder strip. So make sure there's no scratches. There's no bends. I had a customer who had a spare one, and they had it rolled up. but they laid it flat, with something flat on top of it and left dents all over it. They're having a lot of issues because of that. So make sure there's, none of that across. Alcohol is going to be your friend for this one. So, we always use 70% alcohol, and you can use a swab. Swab works great. One of the things that I do like to use for this one also is like a lint-free wipe. So this is a pretty big one. But what I'll do is I'll just cut off a small piece, and it makes it a little bit easier for me to actually, like almost pinch the encoder strip and then slide it across. Rather than the swab, you may have to push it a little bit on it. But with this, I can get a little bit more better of a clean, on there. So one thing I do suggest, I like to always have some of these lint-free wipes. They work great. And again, you always want to use things that are lint-free, especially on the films. Anything else will just scratch it right up. And so make sure you do use just the film. Again, 70% alcohol. You don't need too much. I have it in a bottle here. So I'll just kind of spray a little bit on there. And the area that gets the most ink is going to be over here over your pump area. This is the area where it's cleaning, it's, priming, doing all this stuff. So sometimes you may get some of that up here. So people will forget that area because the head usually sits over here, and then they don't see it at all. So, make sure you do move it across and, check that film right there. So again, look at it real quick. When you get a chance, you'll see all those little lines that I'm talking about. Every single little line that it counts is important. It absolutely has to count all of these guys across, or else, it'll lose itself. It may start printing things that aren't even supposed to be on your prints. It may start ghosting. The head may be jogging back and forth weird. So anytime you have any issues like that, you always want to check this encoder strip. It's a small little strip that you think wouldn't give you that much issues, but it's a very important part of the machine. Whenever it's starting up, whenever it's printing, whenever this carriage has to move, this encoder strip is very important that we keep it nice and clean. So clean both sides. Don't be afraid to get all the way through. I can see a little bit of ink on this side over here. So I'll just kind of wipe it up real good. And again, I'm using the lint-free wipe. It's going across. So using the swab, same thing. I'll get a swab in here. Make sure you are using either newer swabs or you have things marked. Sometimes later in a little bit, we'll use a swab to actually add a little bit of grease to this bar. And you don't want to be mixing up those swabs around. You don't want to start using that grease swab all over your encoder strip or your encoder wheel. So sometimes, people will mark them, grease swab, this and that. If you have a whole bunch of these and you're just constantly grabbing, using, throwing them, that's fine. You're not going to run into that. But sometimes people will keep the same ones. So make sure you're using a nice clean swab or just using a brand new one there. So same thing, just keep it nice and clean. Sometimes you may go weeks where you'll notice it's not even dirty. And then, all of a sudden it gets dirty and you forget about it. So just kind of always keep it in mind, wipe it down. You definitely avoid any weird issues. It can cause the head to grind as well. A lot of grinding issues like that. If the head loses its location, this carriage can kind of go a little bit crazy and start grinding. So very easy. You just saw I just wiped it across. The little bit of ink that I had over here, I cleaned it right up. No more over here, and all good right there. So check it for scratches, check it for bends, check it for any damage. The reason we use 70 is sometimes 90, 99% alcohol, even stronger solutions, they'll be too strong, and they'll actually remove the film, the color of the film that's on here to the point where it just looks 100% clear. But go ahead and always inspect it, and you'll be able to avoid having it. So no harsh chemicals, 70% alcohol, and you'll be able to avoid damaging that guy right there. So very easy, very quick. Another one I'll talk about quick is this little spit tray over here. Sometimes people will forget about it. Keep an eye on it. It will take some time for this to actually get all the way full, but you don't want it all the way full. And I think that's what usually where customers will see or notice this is when they see a huge puddle of, basically ink, in this little tray. So always keep an eye on it. There's actually sponges in there. And what I recommend is to keep an eye on it, and before the sponge fully saturates, wash it or clean it out, get a new one. Because once this thing actually tops up, you'll have a huge layer of just ink and your sponges down here, and then it's really messy to get all this out. So just keep an eye on it. This whole tray is removable, so if you want to, you can actually remove the entire tray out, and then you'll be able to just rinse it out. The whole top part of it is actually a. Let me see if I can get the camera over here real quick. The whole top part of it is actually is a lid. So if you notice, it has a little square, and then you'll be wondering, hey, well, I can't clean it. So this whole top part is actually a lid, and you'll be able to actually remove it. If you have an older printer, you should just be able to just pop it right off. The newer printers, they'll have a screw, here on the side, and you'll have to remove that screw to be able to get this guy out. So, and then it gives you a much larger opening in a much bigger area to actually work it. So always look out for those. We do have those sponges available for replacements. Don't let it, flood. Don't let it get too full. If you guys remove this lid, make sure you put it back all the way down. I've had sometimes customers leave it slanted. And remember that head comes back over here. So you don't want that head, hitting there. So if you do remove that top lid, just make sure you pop it right back down evenly. And one of the things that I'll even do is I'll release my head manually and then just move it slowly over here and then just verify that it's not, about to hit. So you can kind of visually manually check it before you do that. But just make sure you put that back on nice and straight. You're good to go there. So spit tray, keep an eye on it. Don't let it overflood there, and you won't see a mess in there. All right. The next one I'll talk about is the encoder wheel. And some of you guys, I'm sure, have cleaned this guy up. It is part of our maintenance. Although with this one, sometimes I'm one of those guys, it says if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's this whole system that you see right here. Basically, right here we have an encoder disk. Over here we have an encoder strip. Here we have a disk, and it basically serves the same function, but for our gantry. So every time the gantry is moving, the encoder strip is rotating. So I have one right here, and you can see this again. It just has a transparent film on it. It's a little gear in the back that just hooks up to our system there. But at the very edge of it, there's again a whole bunch of little lines just going across it. And every time it spins, our sensor is going to read that guy, and it's going to let the gantry know how far it needs to move, where it's located, things like that. So for the most part, if you're in a clean area, in a nice, clean office, things like that, then you're not really going to see a lot of buildup here. But I've had people, printing here and then cutting wood over here and, doing stuff. And then in that case, you may get a lot of buildup, a lot of dust, a lot of dirt, things coming in here. So make sure you at least give it a look. Look at it. This is a very easy one to clean. Same thing, you can use the swab. I like to also use the lint-free wipe. Again, I like to use the lint-free wipe on these because I can kind of pinch it a little bit and then really get a nice, scrub and clean across it. But be a little careful with these. This is, a hard plastic, but if you are a little bit too rough, you can actually snap, this actual encoder strip, and it's happened a couple of times before. So don't be too aggressive on this one. But quick clean. But again, if you have a general pretty clean area, you shouldn't see too many issues with this guy. But always look at it. 70% alcohol. You can use the swabs. You can also use a lint-free wipe. Again, all these things are lint-free. The swabs are lint-free, static-free. We're dealing with electronics. We're dealing with films. You don't want to leave fibers behind. You don't want to grab a napkin from your counter. All that stuff leaves fibers behind and can give us issues. So make sure you use things that are lint-free, and it works good. So, keep an eye on this guy. But generally, if you ever notice issues with your gantry, maybe it's jerking real hard, maybe it's not riding smooth, maybe you're seeing it slam, in the front, maybe you're seeing it slam in the back. That's when we'll start looking at this encoder strip. That's what the encoder strip will control, is the movement of this gantry here. So keep an eye on it. People will forget about it sometimes. Sometimes people will have the printers tucked in a corner and they won't even have access to it, because that side of it is up against the wall. So try to make it easier on yourself. I had that situation at my house until I actually had to clean it. I had to be sitting there bending over trying to get to it. Now I moved it out of that position, and much easier. So keep an eye on it. Encoder wheel, 70% alcohol, lint-free, wipe or your swab. Remember the same thing. Use a clean swab. You don't want to start rubbing other things onto this encoder wheel. And then a couple of electronics here. So I usually recommend doing this off. Shut it off. There is a sensor right here. There is a cable for the sensor right here as well. You don't want to be dripping, a lot of alcohol or anything in. The alcohol dries. That's one of the reasons we'll also use alcohol. So you want to shut off your printer from the back. Start cleaning this guy. As you push the gantry, this guy will rotate. So that's how you clean the whole thing around. I just kind of almost like grab it there, pinch it, push my gantry slowly, and then just kind of spin it around, clean it up real good. So very easy. And again, just shut it off, and we should be a real good one there. Maintenance on the bottles. People have asked me about, if you have to clean these out. We do recommend cleaning these out. I would say I recommend doing it at least every 6 months to about a year, especially on your whites. Even though we have a circulation system on the pluses, white ink can still settle down here, and over months and months of time, even years, you can get a thick sludge of thick ink, and you don't want that stuff getting into your printer. So I do recommend doing it. It's not 100% necessary. In fact, plenty of people have gone through non-flushing machine, but for the best absolute maintenance, and is cleaning these guys out. So that way, every time it's pulling ink, you're getting nice fresh ink. You're not getting any of that buildup, any of that junk that's in there. Also, your bottle caps. I like to have customers really clean these guys up sometimes, because ink will actually dry on this, and then when you're screwing them back on and off, you get little chunks of that could fall in there. So just kind of keep that in mind. Always look for that stuff. You don't want any of that getting in there and then getting sucked into the system. So those are for that. The CMYK, you don't really get that type of buildup. So these won't require that much, but always recommended, to get in there, rinse these guys out, and clean up. And these tubes, just pull right out. If you grab it, you pull this guy out, it comes all the way out. So usually all you gotta do is pull this out. Same thing to put it back in. We're just pushing it back in, and we're connected again. So all these guys just pop out. If you are gonna decide to pop these guys out, just the tube comes out, not the fitting. And there's a metal fitting on these bottles. You may have a plastic fitting also. That fitting doesn't come off. You just pull the tube, right off of it.
Well, hey, everybody. I just want to make sure everybody's locked in here. This is amazing, amazing content. We are coming up on time. Make sure if you have questions, which we're going to get to Q&A here in a moment, make sure if you have a question, click the little raised hand icon at the bottom of your screen. And I'm going to start patching people in here live here in just a few minutes. Edsel, sorry about that, man. I just wanted to put that out there.
Do you want to get to the Q&A then? So that way we can, I'm sure we got a couple of questions popping up in there, and I want to have enough time to get to everybody there.
Cool. All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump in. First off, how many of y'all got good value out of the last 30 minutes here? I mean, is this all stuff that you knew about? Is this stuff that you do? Are you on the same kind of routine? Drop that information in the chat box over here. I'm really, really, really curious. What we've noticed is that a lack of proper maintenance is the root cause of a significant amount of issue when it comes to people's utilization of the FreeJet product. And sometimes when you're in the moment, it's kind of hard to see that. But what is the old saying? It's like an ounce of prevention prevents a pound of cure, or something of the nature. I mean, this is the epitome of that saying here. So again, if you've got questions, click the little raise hand at the bottom. If you're an attendee, click the little raised hand. If you're a panelist, click that little raised hand at the bottom. And let's start taking some live questions here. And start going that way. I know y'all got to have some sort of questions. There's only one person with the hand raised. Benjamin, let's go ahead and get you patched in here.
How you doing?
Good, Benjamin. How are you?
Great. Thank you.
Of course. How can we help you? I think Benji.
Sorry. Here I am.
Hey, you there? You good?
Yes.
All right. How can we help you?
So I had to change my wet capping station once, and I do all the maintenance daily to that, or every time I print. But when I changed on the older wet capping station, I noticed that on the wiper blade there was a bunch of dry ink. So on the one installed now, will it be wise to? Can I just like run my finger, my nail across it to peel off any ink, or no?
Yeah, you can do that. I mean, as long as you're not too aggressive, just kind of keep in mind it's a piece of rubber, so you don't want to be, too easy. But yeah, I mean, there's times where the swab I had mentioned, or the swab just is not gonna cut it, and you have to get in there and really clean it up. So as long as you're careful, you can definitely get in there. Like I said, you may even peel off a layer of it. I think later on, maybe we'll do a video on how to remove, this guy, because it is a little bit of a trick, to kind of learn how to remove it. But this one I just removed. This one's pretty bad, down there you can see it. But I just removed this one, and I can even peel it off, at that point, a little more. But try to get in there, try to get it off without, removing it. And if we have to, then we'll swap. We'll do a little video on how to maybe remove this guy. Maybe we'll post it on the Facebook page. That way everyone can see that one. But if you get to that point, yeah, it may be easier to just get in there and try to get some of that ink off. Like I said, just be a little careful with the surrounding area. But yeah, get off as much as you can that junk off of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Mute him. All right. Going over here to Joseph Shadwick. Joseph, you should be live, sir.
Awesome. Thank you. So just got through my first, I'd say, year and a half. Had to do some major swap outs with the motherboard, pumping station. Now, the printhead that I feel like probably could have been maintenance a little better, but I'm pretty religious. I have a logbook. I so I can make sure I haven't exceeded my weekly or monthly checks. But what is the shelf life? This is my question. What's the shelf life of, say, the wet cap station or the wiper blade? Because these are consumable parts. So what do you guys project out as the best time to kind of keep something in stock for yourself, so when it comes time to do maintenance, we're not waiting on, say, shipping and handling?
We can, one thing we can do to, I guess as far as the pumps, the pumps, I had mentioned earlier, it's really dependent on the maintenance. But I would say generally, about I like to replace mine about a year. I'd say about a year and a half is when I start replacing that pump. It could be sooner if it's not maintained well, but I would say 6 to 12 months is what we actually say on the pumps. Could last longer, and I've seen them last way longer. With good maintenance. Printhead, same thing. It's printheads. They're usually rated by how many times they can jet. I think most people don't really get to that point because of maintenance. The maintenance prevents them from getting the most life out of that machine. But same thing with that. I would say on average, the printhead that I personally have seen on a case that's lasted the longest was about 3.5 years for the original head. But also I've seen the original head last only 6 months. Again, it's all maintenance, so 6 to 12 months is what we usually say, but it can definitely last longer. My print head, I swapped it out maybe about a year ago. That head was maybe about a year and a half, 2 years of use, pretty heavy use, of it pretty consistently getting used up. So usage, has a lot to do with it. Maintenance has a lot to do with it. So but I would say on average, I usually recommend, some of these parts to be replaced about after a year. And most people will notice the improvement right away. When they get a new head, they'll say, oh, wow, it's firing way better. It's firing up immediately, just over time, those heads, the pumps, they just need to get swapped out, get a new one in there. So one thing, like I said, I had mentioned the pumps. Pump is something that I always have in stock. Dampers is a good one to always keep in stock. You don't want to get stuck with a bad damper all of a sudden. then you got to wait for us to ship you one, and then you're down, for all that time. So one of the things we do have is, I had mentioned earlier, is a maintenance kit. And with this maintenance kit, we pretty much set it up for customers to have these parts all bundled in one and have it a little bit cheaper. So definitely, look into this bundle. This maintenance kit has pumps. It has the pump. It has the dampers. It has the ink tubes. Your ink clips. Basically, a whole little kit to help you bring the printer back to life if you need to. So check that out. It is on our website. We did give you guys a discount, if you buy it all as a package. So, and it's a really good one. But those are the main ones I recommend having stock. Pump, have some dampers in there, have some little ink clips. Sometimes people are aggressive, they break those off. And those are the main ones there. Printhead. Printhead is obviously a pretty pricey one to keep, on the shelf. But if you can have one on there, and then for whatever reason you're down, you boom, you swap it out, you're right back up and running, there. So, but those are some of the things that I always keep in stock. Always ink cleaner, all your cleaning solutions, all that stuff for sure. Have it. Super nozzle cleaner, this guy we will use whenever the head's clogging up, when things are giving us stubborn issues. Keep this guy for sure in stock. One thing in tech is people will call us. You want to help you unclog your hair. You want to help you do this. But then, when you don't have the right solution, it makes it difficult. Then we got to wait for you to get some and everything. So keep one in there. Even if you're not using it, keep one of these guys in there, for the day. Hopefully it never comes, but the day that, the head has a little bit of issues, we can get this guy in there and really help us out.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, real quick on that note, I see some of you people kind of talking about this in here. And we're going to go to the next question here, but really fast on the FreeJet support kit, which Tanya posted links to in there. Everybody on this call today can get 15% off any one of those 3 products with code maintenance. Okay. I'm not posting that on the Facebook group. I'm not sending an email out to everybody. You're only getting that. And literally it's only good until 11:59 p.m. tomorrow. And code maintenance will be shut off. So if you want 15% on the support kit, off the support kit, which again comes with a 330 pump capping unit with the wiper. It's got the 330 damper, the O-ring for the ink lines, the pump soak pads, the waste pad spit trays, FreeJet clips, and then the ink tube. That whole kit, you can get 15% off of that literally for the next 24 hours with code maintenance. And if you want any of that super nozzle cleaner or the direct ink super cleaner, you could also get 15% off of that stuff with code maintenance. Click the link that Tanya posted in the chat, and you will get 15% off of those 3 specific items that I had just mentioned there. So,
Nice.
Yeah, you're not going to get, again, I'm not posting in the Facebook group. I'm not posting an email. Stays here. What happens here stays here, folks. Okay, moving on. Trudy Ann, go ahead and unmute yourself because I want to get you in here.
Yay, it's really
We're here.
Finally have video.
Perfect. Welcome.
I'm stoked. And actually that super nozzle cleaner is a good segue to this. When I'm doing daily cleaning, if I have some areas that are really stubborn with ink, can I use a swab and the super nozzle cleaner to clean off the ink, or is that too strong a chemical for down around the pump and so on?
You're able to use it, if you want to use it. The only thing is that, I guess it's into having to using too much. I guess it is the little bottle is expensive, for a small guy. The solution is great. I can tell you I've saved plenty of heads with this stuff, and it works great. But, I guess as far as cleaning up with it, I guess as long as you're not using too much of it, because it could get expensive, if you're constantly using the super nozzle cleaner to clean up areas. If it's just a small amount, it is fine. It is a strong and concentrated solution. So one of the things we actually say with this guy is sometimes we will actually tell you to wet cap it with this whenever you're having, real issues with your head. The only time we'll say it, not to do it for too long is when you're wet capping it. Don't wet cap it for too long because this stuff is very strong, and if left for long periods of time, it can actually damage the head. So whenever we instruct you guys to do that, it's usually because we have to try to unclog the head. We have to try to clear that stuff out. So we actually add the super nozzle cleaner, but you don't want to be wet capping with this for too long. For too long. I'd say longer than a day or 2 days. It could start to give you some damage to the head. So be a little careful with that. But as far as cleaning your areas, it's fine. It's not going to do anything to the plastic. It's not going to do anything to the rubbers on there. It'll work just fine. Just like I said, it could get expensive if you're only cleaning with super nozzle cleaner.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, Trudy Ann. Appreciate you. Let's go ahead and get Courtney. I see you out there. You look like you're on the road. Hope you're being careful. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry, yeah, we're on the way to dinner. We're over here on the East Coast, so it's getting late. Well, kind of.
Yeah.
Anyway,
No problem.
speaking of the East Coast, that's what I wanted to ask about. If there were any plans to get any vendors over here that have dampers and stuff like that to help with shipping costs and stuff like that for us over here.
Yeah, so we are. I'll take that one. We're working on that. We're actively looking at, because as you guys all know, our HQ is in Irvine, California. That's where everything ships out of, and we are exploring additional distribution centers. This is like insider knowledge, okay, folks? Like we are looking at DCs out either in the central part of the country or on the East Coast. I don't know a timeline for that. Obviously, it's complex. We do not have any distributors out there that do have those other things. However, I personally am actively working on shipping strategy as well with our teams to make it more cost effective for you guys. Because worst case scenario for me and for Victor and for really the entire leadership team is when you guys have to go buy our products from other places because it's too expensive to ship. I don't like that. Nobody here likes that. We're working on that for you. And actually, Courtney, why don't you send me an email at ryan@omniprintonline.com with what you need, and I'll make sure you're taken care of.
Thank you.
On a shipping basis, of course. That goes for everybody here. If you guys here are looking to get something for the next day, if you guys need something for the next 24 hours, need help on some shipping costs, email me directly, and I will make sure you are taken care of accordingly. Courtney, enjoy your dinner. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Of course. All right. Who else do we have here? Let's see. Brian, I'm patching you in. This is going to be the last question here that we take. Mr. Brian, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, you got me?
You're here. How you
I
doing?
can hear you.
Hey, just a comment. I've got years and years of maintenance experience, and a lot of the questions have been answered by amount of time that you've had the machine, year and a half and such. I'm not a full-time user of my machine. I may use it maybe once or twice a week, and I may run, 10 or 15 items. So obviously I don't get the hundreds and thousands of products off my machine, but yet everything is spoken to in annual, semi-annual, or biannual, whatever. Is there a way that maybe we could break down what the life expectancy of some of these components are by amount of prints that you do, if that's not too difficult?
I mean, it'd be too hard to determine it through print count. Again, I've seen printers I've only had 10 prints, on them, and things have to get replaced again because due to maintenance or improper things. So I guess as far as a print count, it'd be too difficult for me to tell you. That same customer that I told you that the head lasted 3 years. She actually, I'm trying to remember the customer. She actually recorded everything in a binder, and she literally had every single job and everything she ever recorded. And I think she said something like 30,000 prints is what she did, I guess. But without that, I mean, it's too hard for me to tell you, hey, in 1,000 prints, you have to replace this or you have to replace that. It'd be a better way. It'd be really more within a year. If you're not using it that much, the machine thrives better when it's being used. It sounds a little bit, like the opposite, but the machine will run better when it's being used, when it's being run. So I would say, expect to replace things like, once a year, maybe a pump, some dampers. If you're not using it that much, what I recommend is just getting in there, doing a couple head cleans, do your nozzle check, shut it down, and then at least that way you keep things pumping, you keep things moving, and not just kind of sitting there. So, to kind of prevent some of that stuff from getting replaced, just get in there, fire it up real quick. Even if you're not going to print, if you want, just do one print, get it firing, and then, shut it back down and you should be good. But yeah, I guess what you definitely don't want to do is just let it sit there for long periods of time, or else you absolutely will be replacing dampers, pumps, and all that stuff can happen within, 1 year, if it's really not being maintained or used.
Okay, now you hit another little button there with when you're not using it. Say you're going to be shut down for a week, 2 weeks, something like that. Some of the people have been talking this online.
Yeah.
Is what time period would you recommend that you go ahead, drain your bottles, flush them, and before you say you're going to be in a shutdown? How long would you recommend?
I would say if you're sure, you're absolutely sure no one's going to be able to touch it or anything for longer than, I would say, a week is fine. 2 weeks, you're kind of, at the line. In fact, one of the things we recommend, if it sits for a week, after a week, if you know it's going to sit for another week, we check the capping station, because sometimes people think it can sit there forever. It will evaporate depending on, your environment, things like that. It could evaporate. And then after a week, it's gone. But I generally like to do about, the 2 week mark. If you're for sure after that, no one's going to be using it, for sure flush it. I'd say 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks of no one using it. And I mean, like, if no one can stop by and do a head clean real quick or anything like that, flush it out. I'd say after about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, just flush it out and do it. Now, the machine, we have had machines here that had to sat here with ink, wet capped, and fired them up good. But just to avoid it, not really risk it, I'd say after 3 to 4 weeks, for sure you want to flush it. That way it sits with distilled water or a clean solution, wet capped, and that stuff doesn't dry up. So it's a little bit more safer, to store it that way. In fact, same thing with machines here. If they're going to get stored, we have some in the warehouse. We have them sitting up in the shelves. We flush them out real good. And when you're doing this process, make sure you flush it out very well. Sometimes customers think, oh, I flushed it good. You walk away. 6 weeks later, you try to fire it up, head's clogged. So make sure, when you're going through this flushing process, that you do, really flush, the machine very well. So that way it can sit. And once you do flush it very well, the machine can sit for, some time, and you won't have to worry about things drying up or clogging. But I would say about the 3 week or more mark, it would definitely be safe to just clean it out and on there. Now, again, if you can get in there every couple of days, do a head clean, nozzle check it, boom, you're good. You won't have to be flushing it as long as you can get that stuff going. But if no one's actually going to touch it, I guess start considering flushing out the machine there.
All right, Mr. Brian, thank you for being here with us, folks. We are 6 minutes over time, and because we respect your time, we're going to go ahead and break the session down. But don't rest assured, we will be back next Wednesday at the same time, bringing you the value that you guys love and deserve. So we appreciate everybody here. We're going to close it down for the week. Edsel, again, thank you, sir, for just showing us the ropes, man.
Anytime, guys.
Everybody give Edsel some love in the chat real quick. Edsel takes time. It takes hours to prepare for this stuff. So if we could just give Edsel a little bit of love in the chat. And again, last thing here, Tanya just posted the links. If you guys want to save some dough, get yourself a support kit with that extra pump. Get yourself some of that super nozzle cleaner, the direct ink super cleaner. You're going to get 15% off the code maintenance. So click the links in the chat. Go get it. 24 hours only, and it's gone. It's not coming back. Love you guys, but that's just how we got to do it here. Anyways, y'all have a good one. We will talk soon. Bye.